Okay, let's say there's a porta potty that when you shit in it, you go back in time. How about that?
There's a what?
There's a porta potty that when you shit in it, you go back in time, and it's in like a
Porta potty range.
scrapyard because no one understands it.
Porta Potty Time Machine.
Yeah, it's like the hot tub time machine, but worse.
Of course.
Because it sucks you down into the blue water. It sucks you down.
It just shoots you out of like another out of another one.
No!
Or, out of the sewer.
You remember that scene from the Men in Black where they get sucked down the blue like toilet thing? It's like that. That's what the time traveling's like. Pops you out and you're covered in blue liquid, no matter what. Looks like a Smurf just gave birth to you. I'm coming up with some bangers tonight.
So I'm gonna tell you this story. This story happened a long time ago in 5 blocks from here.
Five blocks from here.
So I was walking around town, I'm going near the landfill, and they have a scrapyard there for some shit. I'm in the scrapyard. I'm like, fuck, I'm trying to find some like decent sheet metal, trying to make a guillotine. And oh no.
Ah! Brian, execute AA gun.
Get out of here, you commie fuckers. I just want to tell my fucking story. Alright, so as I was I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta take a shit. And normally I wouldn't go into like a porta potty that's out in the middle of a fucking scrapyard, because I'm a normal human being. But like next thing you know, I'm like, it's fucking coming. It's T-5 to lift off. I go in there and I sit down, but next thing you know, I'm fucking sucked into this porta potty. Like I'm like underneath the blue fucking goo. Just shit and piss water everywhere, along with this blue fucking crap. And shit's going fucking crazy at this point. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know where the fuck I am. And then 20 minutes later, well, what feels like 20 minutes later, I come back up. I'm out of the goo, and I'm just in this fucking field. And I'm like, where the fuck am I? I'm like, I must have been teleported somewhere. I must have been something's fucking wrong. What the fuck is going on? And then I start hearing what sounds like German, but I can fucking understand it. And I'm like, why I know I took a few years German in high school, but why the fuck am I able to understand this? And as I keep going on, I'm going close to the German, because I want to be able to see these people, because they might be able to help me out. And as I'm getting closer, I start seeing they're in uniforms.
Oh.
And these are obviously soldiers here. And then, about 5 minutes later, I realize I'm standing in front of fucking Auschwitz, because I see Arbeit macht frei. And I'm like, oh fuck, shit. I'm like, well, this is interesting. I didn't know that they do tours like this in Germany of Auschwitz. I thought this was just oh god, why are there people in the striped pajamas?
Actors.
Like, perfect time for a B. And I'm like, okay, that's a little tasteless for some actors. That's a little tasteless. This is a memorial to a lot of dead Jewish people. I'm just kind of vibing, and I'm like, I'm obviously not vibing. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm just like, and they start yelling at me, and they throw this uniform at me, and they're yelling at me in German, and I can understand it, and I'm yelling back in German. When people yell at me, I yell back, and then they kind of smile and nod and walk away, and I'm like, okay. And then this other fucking person comes and leads me over to this fucking to this fucking office. I go and change, and it turns out they think I'm a German officer. They think I'm the new officer that just got transferred, because apparently they were told that this new officer wears some weird fucking clothes. So here I am, an officer at fucking Auschwitz, And I'm just still thinking like, oh man, this is just it's part of the fucking thing. Like, this is obviously isn't real. This is just some bad taste fucking acting thing that some people decide, oh, it'd be a good idea. Let's have people dress up as Jew, like imprisoned Jews and Nazi soldiers. I was like, okay, I need to figure a way out of this shit. And then, paperwork starts coming in. They have me sitting here in this fucking office with a bunch of paperwork, and I'm looking at all this, and it's all in German. I'm seeing like one saying like numbers of Jews gassed and how much energy that generated for that day. How many are digging holes and all this shit. And I'm like, oh no. And then this goes on for like the better part of a day. And then at one point they want me to come and see the ovens, and I'm like, why the fuck do they want me to see the ovens? Like, what the fuck? Like, what? I get there, and wouldn't you fucking know it, they have the people there, and I'm like, okay, this is obviously going a little far now. And next thing you know, they're putting Jews in the oven. And I'm like, okay, this, like, why? And then I just hear screams, all these fucking screams, and I'm like, okay, that ain't real, that ain't right. This is obviously some fucked up acting. That's when I realized, when they opened the door and there was fire, that this isn't acting. This is real. I'm like, oh shit, motherfucker! I've been put through time, some bullfuckery, and now I'm in Nazi Germany. I apparently just ordered the death of a bunch of people.
Oh no.
I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, fuck. I gotta figure a way out of this. How did I get into this mess? That fucking porta potty. These people think I'm a fucking German officer and all this fucking shit in Auschwitz. And then next thing you know, I hear bullets. And I'm like, oh. And I'm seeing like all these fucking like people roll up outside the gates, fucking shooting at any German they see on site, starting to help the Jewish people. And I'm like, oh no. As I'm looking down at like this fucking uniform I'm in, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. And all these soldiers are like, oh, protect the officer and all this shit, and I'm just thinking like, what the fuck? And I'm going, and as I'm running around a corner and all this shit, I'm running through buildings and shit, trying not to get shot. I see the fucking porta potty out of the corner of my eye. I get in there. I don't even sit down. I literally dive into the fucking toilet. like fucking total ass swan dive into it. And I close my I fucking going through all this shit again, shit, water, everything. I open my eyes. I'm not home anymore still. I'm in another fucking place that it must be the fucking future, because it runs just like fucking cyberpunk shit. As I'm sitting there, I see these sitting in this field, these people come up to me and they start talking some fucking random ass language now, and I'm just looking at them like a fucking idiot. I'm just like, what? 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 And one of them just like takes out his fucking arm and starts beating the shit out of it, and suddenly a fucking iPad juts out of his stomach and he starts typing. He goes, oh hey, just starts speaking English suddenly now, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? He's telling me that I somehow, like, who the fuck am I, if I know where I am, and all this other bullshit, and that why don't I have my ID tag in my wrist. And I'm like, well, obviously I look at him, I'm the sarcastic cunt I am, and I go, well, that's because I slit my wrist, assholes. And, as this is all going on, the other one's looking at me like I'm a fucking dumbass still. And this guy just goes, you need your fucking ID wrist. I'm like, nah, fuck this. And just started running. I started running and running and running and running and running. and then eventually one of them just tases me. Then, 20 minutes later, I wake up and I'm in the porta potty, back home still, and there's a guy knocking on the door. Or there's a guy like fucking wafting me with like a piece of like paper. He tells me I passed out due to the noxious fumes of this old ass porta potty. Told me that the buildup of shit and blue water and piss has just made this porta potty have a hallucinogenic effect on people.
Not the direction I would have taken that story, but good enough. Good job. Good job.